Hello and welcome to episode 74 of the Harryman Show. Today we have a great guest and in store, first guest in the home studio actually, Daniel Todd Carter. He's currently playing his solo project, Sound Animator. He's going to tell us about what his history of drums and what he's currently up to. What's going on, Daniel?
Good morning, Dustin. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
Awesome.
like I
This is
said, you're
great.
the first guest in the studio, so
Yeah, yeah. This is great, man. I have to say this to all the drummers out there. I've lived in Buckeye now for since 2008.
Mhm.
I've never seen a nicer drum room.
Thank you.
This is the most awesome drum room I've ever seen in Buckeye. This is incredible.
Yeah,
This is
thank you.
great, dude.
Yeah, a lot of.
Congratulations. You've really gone beyond the norm here as far as
Yeah.
what a drummer would do for himself in a house with drum kits. I mean, dude, this is insane.
Yeah, I had to come and just check on it, see if it's still here sometimes. You know how that goes, but
Yeah. Well, I know it's been a minute since I've been here.
yeah, we kind of met through my workplace, and kind of just.
Yes.
I
Yep.
remember our go-to we talked about was a modern drummer, and
Yeah. I still have all my modern drummers
So do
in
I.
my archive at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have hundreds of issues that go back as far as 1978.
same here. Yeah,
And Modern Drummer's great. They're in my opinion, they're a premier publication for us.
I say that's about 75% of my education.
Yeah. But I'm also very into Drumhead too. I
Oh
like
yeah,
Drumhead a lot. That's Jonathan Mover's magazine.
that's UK based, right?
No, he's in L.A.
Really?
Yeah, he was in New York for many years, and then he transplanted himself out to L.A.
Really?
and has been running the magazine from there. He's a great guy. I love Jonathan very much. He's a killer drummer, of course, as many drummers know.
Yeah.
Love his playing, and he's just super intelligent business guy, and he's built Drumhead up literally from the ground floor. And now
Really?
it's quite a great magazine, and I enjoy reading that publication as well.
Yeah. So we'll kind of jump into your story.
All right,
All
yeah.
right, so how did it start for you, man?
Well, how did it start? Well, how it all started, the very beginning, the year 1976. I was 10 years old, and I was living in Stamford, Connecticut. And my parents divorced in 1970, so
I'm sorry to hear that.
well, it happens,
Yeah.
So I was living with my mother, and she had a boyfriend at the time, and we were living in his house while I guess my mom was searching for her house.
hmm
And one day, I remember this. This is a crystal clear memory. One day, I had a few let me say that again. A few neighborhood kids
hmm
over, and we used to play as kids. We used to play what was called band, where we turn on the radio and we listen to music. And one kid would have the broomstick, and he would be the guitar player.
Hmm.
Well, I was the drummer on an ottoman with two wooden spoons. And one day, this song came on the radio, and it blew me away. It was a song called Dreamweaver by
Okay.
Gary Wright.
Oh wow.
And not only did the synthesizer sound, the ARP synthesizers that were used on that record, absolutely, I was transfixed when I heard that. I mean, the sound came on the radio, and I stopped. My eyes focused on the speaker. It's a little 3-inch speaker,
hmm
mono radio, and I was like, what is that sound? And then the drum groove came in, and it was, I didn't know it at the time because I was 10 years old, but it was Jim Keltner.
Okay.
And he laid down this smooth, creamy shuffle groove for that track, and I was transfixed by that. I mean, by this point, I was like, that is the most awesome thing I've ever heard.
hmm
And my mom's boyfriend at the time had a son, and he was about 8 years older than me. He was 18, and I don't remember exactly the exact specific date, but a few weeks later, another memory I had was I was standing in the hallway, and he came home one day with the album Led Zeppelin Physical Graffiti. And I'm standing in the hallway, and this is an 18-year-old kid, and I'm just looking at him, and he's all excited, and he pulled the record out, and he put on Kashmir
Oh wow.
with John Bonham. And that did it for me. when I heard that bass drum sound and that snare drum with the flange, the you know the way
Did
that
you
it was.
question his technique at the time? Because when I first heard that too, I couldn't really wrap my head around.
No, I was more or less. Again, I was just stunned and transfixed that anybody could be that good
Yeah.
on the drums. I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. As
Yeah.
a 10-year-old kid, I heard this.
Yeah.
But I didn't become a musician until 4 years later in 1980. But so anyways, that was part of the beginning, and then when I was 12 years old, I used to go spend weekends with my dad. He lived in Rye, New York, and I used to go spend weekends with him. And one cold November weekend on a Sunday, he put me to work in his backyard raking his leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this crappy little Tandy mono cassette recorder, and I don't know how I ended up with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the album Kansas, Point of No Return.
Oh wow,
which is a
Westward Sun's on that, right?
No, that's Left Overture.
Oh, gotcha.
So this is the Point of No Return, Dust in the Wind's on that record, Hopelessly Human, Sparks of the Tempest, that stuff. And anyway, so I'm in the backyard and I'm raking the leaves, and I had this. Like I said, I don't know how I came in contact with it, but it was on cassette.
Mm-hmm.
And I put this album on, and it was Phil Ehart. He's always been the drummer in Kansas, and I thought it was the most articulate art rock drumming, intelligent drumming. I was blown away. Again, this was another moment where I had stopped. The John Bonham moment was a moment when I stopped, and again, even though I didn't know it was Jim Keltner at the time, that was another moment where I stopped, and I started really noticing as a young kid that I had this interest in rhythm, in drums. So anyways, I heard this album, Kansas, Point of No Return, which is now considered a classic rock treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away. That was when I was 12. And then when I was 13 years old, one day I was living with my mom still in Stanford, and she had an 8-track player.
We laugh now, but that was the norm.
That was the norm, yeah. And she had the album ELO, Electric Light Orchestra's album called Out of the Blue.
Oh, that's a badass album.
With Bevan on drums.
Yeah.
And that blew me away. And when I heard that, I was like, well, that's just...
Those songs are still hits today. They're playing them in movie soundtracks, and they're still...
Right, exactly. But I think the thing that really made me notice, the one thing that I really noticed about that record was the fact that Bev was just this pounding rock drummer. I mean, he had a savage attack coming out of those, 1970s drum sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So now at this point, I'm roughly 13 years old or so, yeah. And I had these experiences. And I started taking an interest in, what is the drums? What is rhythm? I like it. Mm-hmm. But then the defining moment came when I was 15 years old, 1981. I remember this clearly. December of 1981, my cousin called me up one day and he says, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Nothing. Being a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Probably staying home and watching TV or whatever."
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, get ready in an hour. I'll be over and I'll pick you up. We're going to Hartford, Connecticut." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So he picks me up, drives me up to my very first concert. Rush.
What?
Exit Stage Left tour.
That was your first concert?
That was my first concert. I was 15 years old. And I'm like, wow, it was sold out. So this was the Hartford Civic Center, and that's, I believe, 28,000 people.
Jesus.
It was packed. I mean, the place was literally, I was like, wow, I didn't know who Rush was.
Huh.
I was like, who's this? And that was my very first concert. And he got 11th row on the floor, dead center, right in front of the stage.
Yes,
and I was 60 feet away from the stage, and it was just amazing. So we're sitting there, we're waiting, for the concert to begin, and all of a sudden, these 4 guys roll out this huge double bass Tama mahogany superstar drum kit with, cymbals everywhere, crotales, wind chimes, tubular bells, everything that you could possibly imagine. So I turned to my cousin and I said, "Oh, this band has 2 drummers.
Nope. No,
And my
not.
cousin says to me, he says, no, they only have 1 drummer. And I went, no, no one person can play all that. And he goes, no. He goes, you'll see. I didn't believe him. And he was like, you'll see. Just sit down and, you know how cousins are. Shut up, sit down and
deal
be
with
quiet
it.
and watch the show. And
Yeah.
so the show happened, and that Dustin was a defining moment, like 10 million other drummers in the world, as far as Neil Peart is
That must have been
concerned.
mythical at that point.
I was so blown away
Yeah.
by that. That's when I walked out of the Harvard Civic Center, I knew I wanted to be a drummer.
Jesus.
Neil totally changed my life. And I heard Bonham and I heard Phil Ehart and Jim Keltner and some of these guys, Bev Bevan, like I was talking about before, but it was Neil. I didn't know, again, the only way I could really illustrate this is to just cut to the chase and say I didn't know at the time anyone can be that good on an instrument.
Anything really.
Yeah. And he absolutely blew my mind. So that's when I went home and I said to my mom, I said, Mom, I want to be a drummer. And she looked at me and she was like, you want to be a what?
Yeah.
And I said, I want to be a drummer. This is what I want to do. I finally had found something in my life because I had a troubled childhood, and I finally found something in my life that I could adhere to, focus my mind on, and use as a vehicle to become good at and to have a direction and a belonging in life. So my mom turns around and she says, okay, well, if you want to play drums, fine. I'll get you lessons. I begged her for a drum set. She said, no, you're going to have to show me for an entire year of lessons before I purchase a drum set for you.
That's still a great method. Yeah, that's a great mom.
And I thought, yeah, she was a good mother in a lot of ways, and she was supportive, and she never gave me a problem about it. And she just wanted me to really prove to her that she wasn't wasting her money. So I went and I found this local teacher, a guy by the name of Lou Gabriel, bless his heart. And I went every week, and he taught me the basics, Dustin. He taught me how to sit correctly at the drum set, and he taught me, the basics of what a single stroke roll is, and a double stroke roll, and a flam, and all that sort of stuff. And he taught me, how to sit at the kit and balance myself on the throne, and foot technique, and how to position my snare drum, so on and so forth. He was an old school jazz traditionalist to play traditional grip.
Was he smacking your hand when you did match?
No. He was kind, and he was gentle, and he was patient. And I studied with him for almost a year. It was about maybe 8 to 10 months I studied with him, and I was pretty diligent. We went through syncopation and we went through stick control. Not the entire book all the way through, but we went through assorted in various pages, and he would show me different exercises and stuff. And then I wanted to get involved and expand more, so I started wandering down to, this was high school. I was a freshman in high school, sophomore in high school at this point. And I started wandering down to the band room, and that's how I befriended the school's band director, gentleman by the name of Charles Murphy.
And you're good with names. I can't remember any of my childhood names.
Rest in peace. And he was a wicked, savage jazz drummer.
Really?
Yeah, this guy he could play. Charles was crazy good. And I walked into his office. I remember this clearly. I walked into his office and I said, Charles, I've been studying. Mr. Murphy, I've been studying, and I would really like you to teach me more. I want to advance. I want to continue to grow, and I need to expand my horizons. So the first thing he said to me was, okay, well, I'm going to audition you. So he put me next to, it was 4 of us. He put me next to, it was myself, a junior and a senior on my right, and a senior on my left.
Is this orchestra?
This was snare drum in the high school band.
Okay.
And I got my butt kicked. I mean, the 2 seniors were just killing.
Yeah.
The junior was good, but obviously I was a sophomore, and I got depressed, and I was like, wow, I realized I had my butt kicked, but this was a test, and he wanted to see where I was at. But later on, he told me, he said, I could see that, I saw the sadness in your eyes, and I saw that
The defeat.
you were really committed to wanting to do this. So he put me on bass drum,
Oh, nice.
which is basically, in the back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And he said to me, he says, I want you to learn time. I want you to feel the quarter note, and I want you to learn time, and I want you to be able to hear the time with other musicians, whether it's brass or whatever it is. And it was brass because that's what a marching band is.
Mm.
So I did that, and I fell out of that pretty quickly because I just got bored with 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was practicing on my own at home in my basement. I was living in my parents' basement, and I had my little, pad
Mm-hmm.
with my sticks, beginner.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving forward, uh, again, I don't remember the specifics here, but one day I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna call up Modern Drummer, and I'm gonna ask them if they could help me find a teacher, and that's how I got to be friends with Scott Fish.
Really?
And Scott Fish, if you remember from the early issues, he interviewed a lot of very famous drummers, including Neil Peart. And that's a story for a different day.
Yeah.
I was supposed to meet Neil Peart, but
really?
through him once, but it didn't work out. But anyways, so I called up Modern Drummer and I said, "Hi, Modern Drummer," and I met Scott over the phone. We never met face to face, but I had started a conversation that went on for about a month or two.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Scott, I said, "Can you find me a teacher that I can really learn from? I wanna keep going." I was just, by this time I had the Rush concert happened. I had been bitten by the bug.
Mm-hmm.
I was thirsty for knowledge and hungry, so on and so forth. And so he calls me up one day and he says, "I've got a lesson for you with, believe it or not, with, are you ready for this?" And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "I got a lesson for you with Gary Chester."
Holy shit. Yeah, that's pretty badass.
And excuse me. And I was like, "Well, who's Gary Chester?" I didn't, I was 15, 16 years old. And he explained to me, well, Gary Chester is one of the most recorded drummers ever.
Mm-hmm.
And he teaches very serious drum lessons. So he arranged it, and I got in I had a little Ford Pinto at the time, and I drove from Stamford, Connecticut up to Suffern, New York, up the New York Thruway, over the Tappan Zee Bridge, and I went up to his house, and he had this enormous studio, like you, just this huge room set up with drums everywhere, and he had a enclosed porch, a screened enclosed porch, and that was his waiting area.
Huh.
And that's where I would wait for my lesson.
Yeah.
And I took a lesson from him, and Gary, at the time, I didn't understand it because, again, I was a teenager and I didn't understand this way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
He said to me, he said, "Well, you suck." And I'm like, "Really?"
I'm not laughing at you.
No.
I just like the sternness.
I played. He asked me to play. He had this beautiful Ludwig Champagne Sparkle drum set with 2 mounted in one floor, and a beautiful Black Beauty snare with all Zildjians. And he said, "Sit down and play." And I did. And he said, "You suck." And I was like, "Okay." I looked at him and I was like, and I'm thinking in my mind, who is this guy? I'm thinking, I'm a beginner. Of course I suck.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be freaking Jim Keltner or whoever, you name it. So he says, "I'll get back to you." And he called up Scott and he said, "Scott, I got to be honest with you. I teach some of the top drummers in the world. I don't really have time for this kid. I just got to be honest with you." So Scott called me and he said, "This is the conversation I had with Gary. I persuaded him to take you on." I was like, "Wow, thank you, Scott. I really appreciate it." It was a blessing from Scott.
This is off subject, but what was something like a lesson like that cost at the time?
He was charging me $25 an hour in 1983.
That's a lot.
Yeah, which today, in today's terms, is about $160 an hour.
Jesus, that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So I started studying with Gary, and that's when my eyes got opened. Because I would go to my lesson, and I studied with Gary for almost a year. And I learned so much in that year. I learned, Gary was a genius. He was one of the greatest teachers I ever had. And I would go to my lesson, And there was a few months there was about maybe 2 months where I'd walk into my lesson and I'd be waiting for my lesson and out would walk Dave Weckel.
Holy shit.
And that's how I got to know Dave.
Yeah.
Well, we both had the same teacher, so every week it would be hi Dave, hi Dan, hi Dave, hi Dan, hi Dave, hi Dan,
Yeah.
And about a month went by, and I said, Dave, where are you playing at? I want to come see you play. And he was playing in a local Westchester County, Fairfield County, New York tri-state area band called Night Sprite
Mm.
at the time. This was before he got famous.
Yeah.
And I got to know Dave. He gave me his number, and I got to know Dave pretty well. Dave's another wonderful, great guy. I love Dave. He was very humble
Yeah.
with me. And I used to, I was underage, so I'd have to go with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first gig I went to was Beefsteak Charlie's in Stamford, Connecticut. He was playing with Night Sprite.
Really?
And my mom had to take me because it was a bar and I couldn't get in. I was underage. I couldn't get in. So my mom and Dave had worked it out with the manager of the bar. As long as the kid sits in the corner and drinks soda,
yeah, no liability.
He could be there.
Yeah.
He could be there.
Yeah.
So anyways, cutting to the chase, again, getting back on track here. Gary was just incredible. I learned so much, and it was Gary was very humiliating. He was very honest. He dragged out a lot of me as far as what my problems were, because his philosophy, Dustin, was if you got mental issues, if you've got psychological issues, if you've got health issues and physical problems, I don't care how good of a drummer you are. You're not going to sound good on your drums. And he always used to tell me this all the time. I remember that he ingrained this into my brain. He said, I don't care if you have technique from here to Mars.
Yeah.
If you can't make me feel good, if I'm not tapping my foot within 5 notes, you're not a real drummer.
Oh, wow.
And he taught me all about time.
Yeah.
He taught me all about what it meant to be in control. Gary's system, the New Breed. I don't know if you know that book.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. That's so famous.
His systems are all about control and creativity. And he always used to tell me, he said, Daniel, you can't just be good on the drums. You have to innovate. And I looked at him and I was like, innovate? What does that mean? One day I questioned him about it. He was like, there's lots of great drummers, and there's always going to be a drummer who's going to beat you out as far as getting that session or getting that recording
or chops.
gig or chops or getting that tour. But you have to innovate. In other words, you have to find it within yourself how to be unique for you.
Yeah, you got to put your stamp on it.
Yeah. So that's how it happened. And and then in '83, I was 17, and I remember I started. My eyes were opened. I met Weckel. I'd be in the middle of a lesson and the phone would ring. It would be Kenny Aronoff, calling Gary. Hey, what should I do? He had this dictaphone. You remember the old dictaphones with the speaker?
Oh, yeah.
Where you could just press the button like on Charlie's Angels.
Jesus.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So he'd be in the middle of a lesson and the phone would ring, and Gary was all about multitasking. So he would just press the button and he'd be giving me a lesson. I'd be playing the drums and I'd hear, Kenny Aronoff would call. Max Weinberg would call. What should I do about this? What should I do about that? How do I negotiate this session or whatever? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, well,
that's real world training right there.
Yeah, your eyes have been opened, dude. You need to straighten up and fly right here.
Yeah.
So I went home. He gave me this lesson. I remember this very clearly. He gave me this lesson. I went home and I jerked around and I didn't practice. And I went back the next week. And I was supposed to know this material. I sat down. Dustin, I played 3 notes. And he got up and he had one of those old school pointer that with the rubber tip that the teachers used to use on the blackboard in school. And he slapped it down on the desk and every other expletive came out of his mouth.
Really?
And he looked at me and he told me to get out. I'm done with you.
Jesus.
And I was crying. I was frustrated. I remember driving home on the New York Thruway, and I remember driving over the Tappan Zee Bridge with tears streaming down my cheek, and I thought I had blown it. And that's when I went home, and I remember sitting in my basement, and I said, I got to practice. I just got to practice. And I went upstairs. I told my mom about it, and my mom said, okay, I want you for one solid week. I want you to put your school aside. Go to school, do your homework, but I don't want you to put the emphasis on school. I want you to put the emphasis on his lesson. And I remember I went down, Dustin, and I practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced,
Mm-hmm.
practiced. And I knew the next week it was the defining moment. I was either going to get kicked out
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to be a wannabe, or I was going to take it seriously and stick with the program. And I decided on the latter. I said I'm going to stick with this program and I'm going to get in with Gary.
Jesus.
And
So
and
he
I
took
did.
you back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went in and I nailed the lesson, and he got up and he came over, and I'll never forget the gleam in his eye. And he looked at me with this gleam in his eye, and he gave me the biggest hug. And he said to me, as long as you continue to do this, you're in. I will teach you anything and everything you want to
he
know.
wanted dedication and
Yeah, he
focus.
wanted dedication and focus because he was one of the most sought after teachers in the world.
He wanted his,
you know.
his reputation.
So yeah, so that created a situation where I went on with him for the next roughly, I would say, solid 9 months to 10 months, and I studied with him and I was practicing. And I graduated the following year from high school, and I just decided, you know what, I don't want to go to college right now. I decided to take a year off from the college thing and just practice. And that was the beginning of my 10,000 hours. And 1985, and that's when I started with, studying his material and listening to all these great drummers and gleaning from them,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to get good. Trying to get good. I got into my first amateur band the following year. I didn't even play in the band. I would just show up to rehearsal,
Really?
and I was kind of playing a little bit of synthesizer, a little bit. I bought a Roland Juno 106 after
Oh, badass.
I got out of recording technology school, and that was in 1986. I wanted to learn to be an engineer. So, anyways, that's how it all started, basically.
So I know you left a lot out, but that's pretty cool. That's actually,
Yeah.
I didn't know you were in that circle at that time.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Just a kid, and a pretty immature kid, but at the same time hungry.
Yeah.
I was also hungry and thirsty.
Yeah.
And I wanted to learn.
So were you did you have a set to incorporate as you went? When you were playing in local gigs? When did that start for you? Like,
My first amateur band I started was with a very dear friend of mine who we're still friends to this day. He was the very first bass player I ever played with. Shout out to my friend Stephen White, who lives in Fairfield.
Oh.
He was living at Darien at the time, and we both decided to start this band. It was an amateur band. We were doing Cream and Zeppelin and playing in a nursery school. And we did one gig, and then we broke up.
Oh, wow.
The guitar player in that band lived in Rowayton. I think it was Rowayton, Connecticut, and we would go over to his house and listen to he had a bunch of vinyl, and he had King Crimson and with the Face. Do you remember the debut King Crimson album?
Yeah.
We listened to that, and we played, I don't know, maybe I would honestly say it was just a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided that he wanted to go off and go to school, and that caused the band to break up. And then in 87, I had been practicing a lot, 85, 86. I went to school in 86 at the recording workshop in Chillicothe, Ohio, to learn to become an actual licensed audio engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And came home from that and just continued to practice and learn. In 87, I got into another local amateur band where that was when I started, to answer your initial inquiry about, I started gigging.
So were you looking to be in a prog band, or were you kind of just all over the place?
The first prog band I joined was a New York City-based prog band called Lunar Sea. Long since defunct. The band doesn't exist anymore. That was 1991, so it was a few years away yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was very heavy into prog, progressive rock, first,
Mm-hmm.
in as far back as high school.
Now, this is all on the East Coast, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is living in Stamford,
I know
Connecticut.
you lived in California too, but was there a cultural change in like musicians coming and going compared to like the West Coast?
Majorly so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it just more cutthroat or just more?
The musicians in New York are a unique breed.
Yeah.
It's cutthroat there.
Yeah.
You either shit or get off the pot
Yeah.
with musicians there. The real players, shall we say?
Yeah.
And in the West Coast, of course, it's hippie, it's
Laid back. Yeah.
and it's a way different vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the popping music at the time? That time frame we're talking, was it like? I know R&B and funk was kind of picking up. Was that kind of blowing up at that time?
Yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I heard some of that stuff, but still, I was more the kind of drummer and the kind of musician that I wanted to hear more intelligent music. I'm not saying R&B
No, I know
and
what you mean.
funk isn't intelligent, because there's a lot of good stuff too. I mean, when I was in high school, I bought the album Herbie Hancock Thrust
Mhm.
with Mike Clark on drums, and that blew my mind as far as jazz funk is concerned. And I thought, well, this is some really cool stuff too, you know. But I was in high school and during the mid 80s and into the late 80s, I was into the Big Six, which is Floyd, Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you bring up Floyd. That was my introduction to synthesizers. Were you kind of building a passion for that as well as this time frame playing drums?
Yes, yes. I at the recording workshop in 1986, this again, it's peculiar and weird how idiosyncratic things occurred in my life. So
I want to play synthesizers so bad. Just to make a note on that, I've always wanted to learn how to play those.
Really, I could help you with that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
please,
Yeah,
yes.
I could absolutely help you with that. I've been a synthesizer player for over 3 decades now.
Yeah,
so.
that's an art that I've always wanted to touch base on.
Yeah, so one day I'm in the studio. It was after class, and I'm just in there, and this dude walks in, and he goes, "You want to buy a synth?" And I looked at him, and I was like, "Well, it depends." He's like, "Well, I got a Roland Juno 106. I'll sell it to you for $50."
Jesus.
I was like, $50 for a Roland Juno 106?
Well, yeah,
Sure,
fell
done.
off a truck.
Yeah, yeah. And then he brings in a Yamaha CS 10. No, it was a Yamaha CS 01,
Mhm.
which is the same synth that Chick Corea used in the Electric Band
Really?
with Weckl.
Yeah.
And all those guys, John Patitucci and Eric Marienthal and all those wonderful musicians. And he had this little Yamaha CS01, and it only made 4 sounds, Dustin, but those 4 sounds were killer.
Yeah.
And I regret I traded that synth for a Mellotron CD-ROM a few years later with a keyboard player I used to play in a progressive rock band. Unfortunately, he committed suicide in 1996.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But he came over to my house one day and he was begging me for that synth. He was like, "Dude, that's such a cool synth. I gotta have it. I'll give you a Mellotron CD-ROM," which was the Mike Pinder Moody Blues CD-ROM. I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
You know, I traded it, but I shouldn't have done that. But I had the Juno 106, and so to answer your initial inquiry, 1986 was the beginning of my synthesizer journey.
Mhm.
In 1988, I decided to start my studio. And I went to Sam Ash in White Plains, New York, and I bought a Korg M1 and an Oberheim Matrix 1000.
Nice.
Those are my first 2 synthesizers, a digital synth and an analog synth.
Did you ever mess with the Moog stuff, or was that later on?
Later on, I didn't get a Moog until 91. That was, I went, that's another crazy story. I
just love the way Moogs look and sound. And
Yeah. No, I do too.
Yeah.
And I have several in my studio now. But
Nice.
anyways, I had another friend of mine who I lived locally right around the corner from me, and one day he says to me, "Hey man, Hawkwind's playing in New York. Let's go see Hawkwind." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go see Hawkwind at the Wetlands." It was at the Wetlands, and we went, and this was December of 1990. And Harvey Bainbridge, who was the keyboard player in Hawkwind, had a Moog Source sitting on top, all the way up on top, very high up. He positioned it way up high so that everyone could see it. And every time he touched it, Dustin, it was the most galactic, spaced out sound I ever heard in my life.
That's badass, dude. Yeah.
It was and I have the show on tape.
Really?
I still have the show. I had to record it.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to record it. That's the most spaced out sound. It's beyond Star Trek. It was it was so cool.
Yeah.
The sound, and it was a Moog Source. And so after the show, he's standing by the bar, and I walked up to him and I said, excuse me, what is that synth that you were using? He goes, oh, right, mate. Yeah, that's a Moog Source, man. And I said, yeah, that's the coolest synthesizer I've ever heard in my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a monophonic synthesizer. And it only makes one note at a time, and you can only produce one note. But that note is
Yeah.
to die for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I got into synths, 1988, and I decided to start my studio, and I just slowly have been building over time, and now I have, well, last time I checked, I have 28 hardware synthesizers
Jesus.
in my studio, and I have 24 software synths in
Damn.
my studio. I got the Arturia V collection and
Would you say drums or synths are more addicting?
drums.
Yeah, I feel like
This is a drummer show, so I'm just gonna be honest.
No, I'm
man.
just saying, like, just in honesty, I can see those both being kind of just never ending.
Yeah. But I mean, I was into Pink Floyd. I was into Tangerine Dream. I was into early Yes. Obviously Rick Wakeman, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course. Keith Emerson with the Moog modular.
Mhm.
So I heard all these synthesizers from as far back as high school, and I was very intrigued by that too.
Mhm.
And I had gotten introduced, backtracking a little bit. I had gotten introduced to science fiction when I was 4 years old. So I
Okay.
was heavily into Star Trek and UFO and the show UFO in Space 1999. These are all 70s shows. So I mean some of your younger audience are going to be like, "What is that? I never heard of that." But
Yeah.
some of the older audience that is listening to this will go, "Oh yeah, Space 1999. I remember that,
Yeah.
and I remember Star Trek from the 60s and so on and so forth." And it really was a combination of an instrument that I could express myself on, that I could combine that with science fiction and space and so on and so forth. And
Do you still have a science fiction bug in you?
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Sammy, that's another podcast. Yeah.
I'll never get rid of that. I mean,
Yeah,
I've always been fascinated with science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, more so today.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I know when did you venture out from the East Coast? Was it kind of in that time frame, or did you?
No.
Okay.
No. I by the time, this was where we left off with the preceding conversation here. 87, 88, I was playing in a couple of local amateur bands in the Fairfield County area, and then 88 I continued and I was practicing a lot. And then 89 I was having some family issues. My aunt passed away from cancer, and that really affected me because she was a very loving person towards me, and she really helped me a lot with issues. She was a person I could go talk to a lot, and I did.
Mm.
And then in 1990, I answered an ad in the Village Voice in Manhattan. An ad was put in there by Kenwood Denard. I don't know if you know who Kenwood Denard is.
Sounds familiar. I'm really bad with names.
He was the drummer with Miles Davis and Wayne Shorter, and he's also played with Stanley Jordan, and he's played with Herbie Hancock. He's played with Allman Brothers. He's one of the gurus in drumming.
Yeah.
And he had a number in this ad, and I called him up. I just called him up, and he picked up. This is Kenwood Denard. Can I help you? I said, hi, Kenwood. You give drum lessons? He says, yeah. So that's how I met Kenwood Denard, and we've been friends to this day.
Really?
So to answer your initial question, it wasn't a while yet. It was still 10 years away before I actually moved out to California. I moved out to California in June of 1998.
Okay, and then when did you start doing your solo projects?
The very first trace of me starting to do my solo sound animator was in 1989 when I started writing down my ideas in a notebook that I still have.
Yeah.
It sits in my archive to this day, and those were the original ideas for my solo sound animator. But I didn't call it that at that time. It was just a solo project.
Yeah.
I didn't start calling it sound animator until the roughly early to mid 90s.
Yeah, and off subject, but you have some of the best handwriting I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. What do you call it? You went to school for it. Is that correct?
Yes, at the Connecticut Institute of Art, I studied calligraphy.
Calligraphy, that's the word. I remember you bringing a list to the store one time, and I'm like, did you write this? Or is this printed?
Yeah.
I was like, this is just beautiful handwriting.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
it. And
that.
it shows in your playing, too, the articulation. drumming shows a lot of our personalities, and even the way we write and stuff like that.
Right.
So I
Right.
I
Yeah.
saw how it transformed and transcended into your playing as well.
Well, I learned one of the things I learned from Gary and also Kenwood too was articulation and attention to detail.
Yes.
Kenwood, Gary taught me, of course, what we had previously discussed, but Kenwood taught me prestigious and phenomenal drumming techniques.
Hmm.
And he had exercises that went way beyond the norm. Uh, he was a Berkeley professor for 25 years. I just spoke to Kenwood about a month ago. He just retired after 25 years at Berkeley.
Hmm.
And we laughed. We reminisced and laughed because he used to teach this course at Berkeley. And he had a 93% dropout rate
Ooh,
in the class with drummers.
that's rough.
And it was a class where he taught what is called an AOB graph, and I'll explain that to you sometime.
Hmm.
It's really difficult. You really have to be warmed up, and you really have to be mentally in tune to be able to handle his AOB graphs. But what it does is it shows you where you're at on the grid
Really.
of time, whether you're rushing or dragging.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I studied with Kenwood in 1990 and 1991, and then in 91 I decided I was working at a law firm
Hmm.
in 1991. That was a really good job. I always regretted letting go of that job, but I quit to go to art school
Hmm.
because I really wanted to pursue my art and I really wanted to pursue my music. So I went to art school in Greenwich, Connecticut, the Connecticut Institute of Art, which was at the time was a very prestigious school. It was a tough school to get into. It's now defunct.
Hmm.
It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a good school and people were coming from all over the tri-state area to go to that school. And I went to that school 91, 92.
Hmm.
92 is when my professional career began as a musician. I
Nice.
got into my first professional band called Lord Have Mercy. We toured all over.
Just a prog band? What kind of genre?
No, this was a hard rock, thrash, reggae.
Oh wow, that's the best.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one
So it
realm
was
to
like,
another.
yeah, we were into Nirvana. We were doing some Black Sabbath. We were doing some progressive stuff. We were not really covering like Yes or anything like that, but we were
Branching out.
taking ideas from bands like Yes and bands like King Crimson and kind of putting a psychedelic twist on it and adding dub and reggae and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we were into Bad Brains and we were into Human Rights and stuff like that. And that was a great gig. That was when I really got to go on tour. I got paid for the very first time and started opening up for some major acts. We opened up for the Spin Doctors and we opened up for Human Rights and Bob Marley's guitar player in Human Rights, and we opened up for Eka Mouse, and that was a great gig, and Yellow Man, and all these really cool gigs all over the East.
So were you attracted to the idea of touring, or were you turned off by it?
No, I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it.
It's either one way or another.
Yeah, it
for
was
most-
great. I
yeah.
loved it. I was a young man. I was in my mid 20s, and I was, as far as I was concerned,
Heaven.
yeah, let's hit it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I saw life and touring at that time as an adventure. This
Yeah.
is an opportunity to get out on the road, go places I've never been to before, and meet new people.
Yeah.
Which is what I really want, and get paid.
Yeah. It's not for everybody though.
Yeah. No, I know, but I really dug it.
Yep.
And Lord Have Mercy was a phenomenal band. I mean, killer guitar player in that band. My good friend Dave Aaron. Shout out to Dave Aaron right here. And bass player was also very, very good. The lead singer in that band, that was his band, used to be in a band called Stiley.
Okay.
Which was a very, very popular band. Very, very well known. They were known from Florida to Maine. I mean, they toured all up and down the East Coast for a long, long time. And they had quite a following. And Stiley broke up, and he formed Lord Have Mercy, and I got the call. He called me up one day, and my friend Roger, unfortunately, he passed away a few years, too, ago of cancer.
Sorry to hear that, too.
Yeah. Roger was a difficult individual to deal with because he was very demanding. But at the beginning, he was kind of taking advantage of me a little bit. But once I stood my ground with him and I told him, look, I'm a good drummer. And if you want a good drummer in your band, you need to show some respect. And that's when we came to a mutual agreement. And we actually became quite good friends.
Usually how it goes.
Yeah. But he was extremely driven.
Yeah.
to want to make Lord Have Mercy successful, and he did. I mean, the band didn't last long. The band imploded after a year, unfortunately, and that's how it is in the music industry. I mean, you get four very strong-minded individuals together.
A types.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes it always doesn't work out. And that band broke up. I actually injured myself as a drummer because I was playing so furiously at the time. I regret to this day, Dustin. I so regret to this day that I should have recorded some of those drum solos
Yeah.
that I did, because I had friends even tell me recently, I remember, dude, when I came to see you at blah, 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 and you did this drum solo, and everybody's jaw was on the floor, and you were doing this stuff like, oh my God, like, and I regretted it. I regretted it to this day that I didn't record any of those drum solos. But anyhow, moving forward, the band broke up. That was end of 92, and I still had a year to go in college at art school. That was with no liberal arts. It was just art school. And my focus was, after I developed carpal tunnel syndrome from playing furiously, furiously. I mean, I used to play my ass off.
The big C.
You know, every night.
Yeah.
You know, we were playing a lot of gigs. Sometimes 3 or 4 gigs a week.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Plus, I had to go to school full time.
Yeah.
And I had to work a part-time job.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
So I mean, I was at that point. You know, you're in your mid-20s. You had unbelievable metabolism, and I could stay up for 3 days and do all these things to meet deadlines and assignments and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so I had a year to go in school, and that was 93, and I graduated in June of 94 from the Connecticut Institute of Art, and that's when I started another band called Solid Space, and with a guitar player. We no longer talk anymore. Anyhow, that's a different story for a different day. But he came to my graduation, and after the graduation, we had a at the house after party where everyone came over, and we had, you know, the whole nine. You know, we had a cookout, barbecue, cake, and then thanks. What are you gonna do with your life, Daniel? Well, I'm gonna be a drummer.
Yeah, back on track.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be a drummer, and so then that's when this individual and I decided that we were gonna start a band, and that was Solid Space, and that's where my professional international recording career began.
Nice.
And yeah, so that's how it started.
So I want to touch base. I know we can probably talk another 2 hours just about that stuff.
Sure.
But I want to touch base about what you're currently doing with your current gear. I know you mentioned you had a home studio. What is your go-to drum set now?
My go-to drum set in the studio at the moment is my Sonar Force 3005. It's a full maple kit.
Oh, nice.
And it's a sunburst finish. I've got, like you, Remo color tones, top and bottom.
Yeah.
Love those heads.
Yeah.
They're killer. I've tried all kinds of different heads on those drums. Pinstripes, ambassadors, clear ambassadors, coated ambassadors. And I somehow always just drift back to the Emperor because I like a 2-ply head.
They work on everything.
And I tune it really tight, like Bruford, Billy Cobham, John Bonham. That's what I go for. But I like a lot of attack. I like to be able to, the tip of the stick to hit my drum, and I want to feel the attack of the drum and then get the resonance to come. So that's my go-to drum set in the studio, and that's, I got that. It's basically what it is. It's a 12 rack. I'm like you. I keep a simple kit these days.
Yeah, I have to have that rise up in front of me.
Yeah, I have a 12 rack, and then I have a 14 floor with a little 20 kick, and then the matching snare is a 5.5.
Nice.
And then it's all Zildjians, and I got from you actually. Well, from where you work at. But yeah. I somehow, again, I became extremely blessed. But I got the full set. I somehow managed to, through the company you work for, put together an entire Zildjian. It's the limited edition 391. 391s. They only made them for 1 year, and they're all prototype cymbals.
Oh, nice.
And I got the 22-inch ride, which is a medium ride, and I got the 20-inch medium ride, and I got an 18 and a 16 crash, and I got the 14-inch Master Sound hi-hats.
Oh, nice.
So that's on that kit at home. And then I also, sometimes I'll throw up the Oriental China, which is an 18-inch, or I'll sometimes throw that up. And then my live kit these days is a Yamaha Stage Custom.
Oh, those are like a steal for the money, man. Those things just sound
Yeah,
good.
all birch
Yeah.
and raven black.
Yeah, nice.
And that I've got two bass drums that I switch out on that kit. I've got the 20 by 17, which is a pretty big. It's like a little cannon.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I have a little 18, a little
Nice.
15 by 18.
Yeah.
And the 12 and a 14 in the raven black. And I went back again later and I bought the matching snare drum. And then I also got a Ludwig Super Light on that kid too that I switch out. When that's a little
things crack.
Yeah,
like,
it's a little. I got it tuned real high.
Yeah.
And it's a steel drum. And on that kit, I'm using Meinl Classic Customs Dark.
Oh, those are great too.
And they're great. I
Yeah.
love them.
Yeah,
They're great. They're not like the Zildjians.
No, China's especially in that series. They're like shh, just cut.
Yeah, they're not like the Zildjians. They I've been a Zildjian man all my life. So I mean, I know the Zildjian sound and I know what sounds really good with a Zildjian.
Yeah.
And when I played the Meinls for the first time, it was a completely different characteristic, but I liked it. And I said, okay, I can dig this. So I've had the Meinls up for a while. And then some of my supplemental kits, I have what you have. I have the Gretsch Catalina Club, which is the mahogany.
Those things sound great too.
And they're great. They're great for the money.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a real Gretsch kit, of course. You know, but of course, most drummers nowadays can't afford to buy a real Gretsch drum set. And I'm not going to spend $5,800 on a drum kit when I'm
someday.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm playing with somebody that's and they're paying me really, really well, then I'll go buy a real Gretsch drum kit.
Yeah.
I've always loved the Gretsch sound, by the way.
Well, even the Renowned series is great too.
Yeah, they're great.
The Brooklyn series, I mean, they're pretty top tier as well.
Yeah, they're great drums.
Yeah, they are.
No matter what, they are great drums. And but I love my little Catalina Club. I have the little blue satin flame.
Oh, nice.
Which is a great, the little 18-inch. It's a bop kit.
They don't make those that finish anymore.
They don't make that finish anymore?
Not that I haven't seen it. Now they're more on the natural kind of finishes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, interesting. So I got that kit, and then I recently my most recent purchase is a Mapex Mars 24.
Oh, nice.
And that's another birch kit.
Yeah.
But that's a monster bass drum. That's a 24 by 16.
Yeah, your neighbors are gonna hear that.
Oh yeah, I had the cops come to my door because
of
that kick drum.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, they came to my door and they were like, "Dude,
yeah,
you're a good player, but
you're
lighting up the whole neighborhood."
You got car alarms going off out here.
Yeah. And that drum set wasn't even mic'd. That was just the natural.
Yeah.
And that's a little 12 that I have on a stand up top, which is I tune it up real high. Again, it's all red color tones on that top and bottom. Even the kick drum too. I'm using a P3.
Oh, nice.
On the kick, but then the front head is just the regular Mapex, resonant head.
Yeah.
And then I went and I bought. I was telling you before, I went and I bought that Gretsch black nickel over steel 6.5 by 14, which is very similar to the drum that you were showing me before. And that's just a beast of a drum.
Yeah, those things are just so sensitive at the same time.
Beastly drum, man. And I got Ambassador X on that.
Yeah, you should try the P77 too if you ever get a chance.
Okay, I will. I'm always open-minded to experiment.
I've actually just recently been introduced to that head, and that thing's nice.
And the thing that I'm really, really happy about at the moment is I'm just about ready to order my very first set of Ks, which I've been wanting since I was in my 20s. And I'm in my 50s now, and I've always wanted a real set of real Ks.
Yeah, and there's different lines too, so you kind of have to be picky.
Yeah, so I did a wedding gig for my bass player friend who I was telling you about before. He asked me to play at his wedding in 2007, and the drummer in that band, he had a 22-inch K dark medium ride, which was the Cindy Blackman cymbal at the time.
Wow.
And I fell in love with that thing. I played it like for 3 minutes, and I was like, I got to have the cymbal. The cymbal is just killing.
Yeah.
I finally got one.
Really?
And I have that at home, so that's my first K.
I highly recommend sometime we get the cluster crashes.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I heard about those.
Yeah, hit those and you're like, oh, like,
wow.
Yeah, those are my next symbol purchase right here.
Okay. So I'll keep an open mind to that
Yeah,
too.
especially
Yeah.
the 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get those Ks here probably in the summer.
Nice.
Finally.
Yeah.
It only took a minute or two to get them.
It is what it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I have that, and then as I was telling you before, before we came on air here, my pride and joy is my Tama Art Star 2s, that's in the quilted bird's eye maple.
Yeah, hold on to that.
I've had 3 drummers approach me and say, "I'll buy that kit from you right now.
Don't.
I'll take you out in the parking lot and I'll put cash in your hand." And I was like, "Nope, I won't sell those drums."
No, don't.
And I've toured all over the United States with those drums.
Yeah.
All over North America with those drums. And I've had some very famous drummers play those drums. The Pip Pile, I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah.
He was the original drummer. Well, not the original drummer, but he was the drummer that replaced Bill Bruford in National Health.
Huh.
I got the call to tech for Gong in '96.
Really?
Yeah, the manager of Gong called. I was sitting in my studio one day, and the phone rings, and, "Hi, Daniel? Yeah. Listen, this is Sean Ahern calling you. I'm the manager of Gong, and I was wondering if you wanted to go on tour with Gong." Well, how am I going to say no to that?
Yeah.
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 But the condition is we need your drum kit. I was like, okay.
Mhm.
My condition was, well, my drum kit doesn't leave my house unless I'm following it.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, I'll let you tech the tour.
Jesus.
And that's how I got to know Pip, and we became very, very close. And Pip's one of my favorite drummers from the English Canterbury scene.
Huh.
And I don't know if you remember a band called Camel.
Sounds familiar.
They were a prog band from England, and Andy Ward, the drummer in Camel, also played those drums as well.
Really?
And those drums, I bought that kit in 1990 in Portchester, New York.
Really?
I got it with all top of the line Zildjians. They don't even make it anymore, but Tama made what is called the Tama Stilt hardware, where they actually make the hardware tilt towards you. You could adjust it
with the big weights on them.
Yeah. I had all the top of the line Tama hardware, and these drums were just amazing, and they're still amazing, and I still have them.
Yeah,
I'll never sell that kit.
Yeah.
That kit will. I'm actually going to put in my will to have the. I'm going to take the front head off and the back head off, and I'm going to get the coffin to be big enough so that you could stick my body through the coffin and I could be buried in my bass drum.
Oh, Jesus, that's pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
That's
well, that's cool. How I'm just trying to illustrate the point that's how much I love those drums.
Definitely.
Those drums are an extension of my soul.
Yeah.
And I love those drums. And every time I've played them, I've had people come up to me and say, "Dude, your drums sound freaking amazing.
Yeah.
How do you tune those drums?" And I've spent hours tuning those drums to get them to sound the way they sound.
Yeah.
They sound great.
Yeah.
They're killer drums.
Well, before I let you go here, what is your current project and the best way to reach out to you for your services on website, channels, etc.?
My website is www.soundanimator.
Okay.
That's one word. SOUND.
I'll share the link on here.
Thanks. I appreciate that. SOUNDANIMATOR.com. One word.
Okay.
That's my main website. That tells everyone and anyone who I am, what I've done, and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find me on Facebook, Daniel Todd Carter on Facebook, and then I have a YouTube channel that I just started. That's one thing I kind of fell behind on.
Oh yeah, that's a bit of a grind. For
the annals of life. But if you want to find me on YouTube, just go to the search bar on YouTube and type in Promo 1 Daniel on Drums.
Okay.
And my site, my channel will pop right up.
Okay.
I only have one video up there at the moment.
Oh yeah, it takes time.
But my goal this year is, before the end of this year, is I'm going to greatly expand on that social media.
As you should.
Yeah. So what I'm working on at the moment, I've got a lot of forks in the fire at the moment. I just got over being, as I was telling you, I got over being very, very sick.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It wasn't COVID.
That. Yeah.
Thank goodness. It was not. I do not have COVID, but I got really, really sick. So for the last month or so, I haven't really been doing much.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been concentrating on lately, to cut to the chase, is I just expanded my studio.
Oh, nice.
For many, many years, my studio was a one-room studio,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically, it's a project studio, but it's a nice studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all my equipment stuffed into this room.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally persuaded my wife to allow me to expand my studio to a second room. And she said, okay, yeah, my wife, Judy, I love that woman more than anything in this world. She's been so supportive to me. She bought me an electronic drum set. What more can you
Yeah.
ask for a wife, And
Yeah, without a supportive spouse, you're kind of dead in the water.
she's just been totally whenever I need help with social media or whenever I need help on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
she comes and she helps me. And she's a very, very hardworking person. She's from Haiti.
Mm.
My wife is from Haiti. So she comes from a different culture. But I've never been loved by a person like that.
Yeah,
And I've never loved a person more.
that's good to hear.
So she said, okay, go ahead. You take over the office. So I took like 12 synthesizers.
You're tapping on walls for
Yeah,
supporting beams.
Exactly. I took 12 synthesizers out of my studio and I set them up in the office. And now I have two rooms. I have my main room, which is where the sonars are. And I just recently, also, I was telling you before, I just recently got the brand new set of Roland V drums.
Yes.
And I really wanted those because
Yeah.
I have problems with my neighbor.
That
And, it's tough being a drummer.
Yeah.
I should have played the violin or the flute or something like that if I want. Or, you could play bass or whatever, or guitar, and you could practice in headphones. But what's great about the V drums is I can play at 2 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
I'm in my own little universe.
No louder than TV.
Yeah. And so I got the V drums set up next to the sonars, and that's my main room, and that's where all my computer is and my recording equipment and all my microphones are in there. But I have an analog synthesizer set up in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the other studio, I have most of my synths, my live setups in there. So I'm gonna be working on over the summer is I'm gonna be working on putting together a brand new solo show.
Oh, good.
It's been a while since I've gotten out and played live, and I'm itching to get back out into the live arena again. And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get back out there. I'm gonna tour around the state.
Good.
I've already played solo shows in Tucson,
Oh, good.
but I want to get back down there, do some solo shows there here in the valley.
And when you say solo, are you just playing with loops, or are you?
Some of it is looping.
Yeah.
Some of it is live looping. Some of it is sequenced. Some of
Nice.
it is backing tracks.
Cool.
Some of it is played live.
Nice.
And that's all my synth stuff. I have 2 solo shows. I have a solo show that I do called Drums in Space.
That sounds. It really sounds badass.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it sounds good.
And that's going to be my. I'm going to get a. You probably already, because you're very intelligent, very knowledgeable when it comes to
Thank you.
equipment.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get that little Tama pancake kit.
Oh, those are great.
And I just got an Elisa strike pad,
Oh, nice.
and I've got a wave drum,
Those are great too.
and I've got an Electron Digitact.
Mhm.
So I combine my electronics with this little Tama pancake kit, and I do Drums in Space, which is ambient electronic progressive space music with drums.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of Pink Floyd and
Yeah.
Tangerine Dream but I'm trying to do my own thing. I don't want to sound like them.
Yeah.
That's my goal. I'm using that as kind of a blueprint,
Yeah.
And then I have another solo show where I don't do any drums. Well, I use my wave drum. I have a Korg wave drum, so I'll do like percussion type stuff
Mhm.
with hands. But that's more synth oriented, and that's more ambient and more pure space music.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that. I started a band in September of 2019, a band called Cloud Space.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a spiritual, progressive, forward-thinking jazz. I wouldn't call it jazz fusion. I would call it progressive jazz.
Wow.
Kind of ambient too. There's going to be electronics. There's 2 sides of that project. It's just myself on drums, and I have a saxophone player.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the original saxophone player unfortunately got COVID, and he had to leave the group. So I have a new saxophone player, a gentleman by the name of Frank Smith, a really nice guy. He lives out in the Scottsdale area.
Mhm.
And he used to play with Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Really?
Talk about memories, man.
Yeah.
My goodness. I was like, when he told me that, I was like, oh my God. I'm driving home in my car and I'm like, Gladys Knight and the Pips. That's like oh my God. I was like, that's like 1960s, early 70s, you know?
Yeah.
But he's a great player. He's a great player. So I just spoke to him yesterday and we're making plans to get the ball rolling with Cloud Space again. And then on top of that, I've got, believe it or not, Dustin, I've got 5 albums cooking in the oven at the
Jesus,
moment.
I believe it.
Yeah. So I noticed recently that I'm one of those types of individuals where you know how some musicians will release an album or two a year
Yeah.
and they're steady with
Yeah.
that. I'm not like that at all. I go 10 years without releasing anything and then all of a sudden I'll have a 2-year time frame where I'll put out 14 records.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way I
Yeah,
guess that's just the way I roll.
It's the time and place. Yeah.
So
Well-
yeah, I have 2 I have 3 new solo sound animator records that are cooking in the oven at the moment, and I have a 2 EPs for Cloud Space. The
Mhm.
material's been almost written. There's still more stuff that needs to be composed yet.
Mhm.
And then I have another project that I'm doing, which is a jazz project, an album I'm doing called Searching for the Source,
Really.
which is all going to be organ and mellotron, and that's going to be jazz, but it's going to be kind of ambient jazz, kind of like early Pat Metheny type stuff.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if you've ever heard of a band called Shadowfax.
Possibly.
If you listen to their early stuff back from the early 90s, late 80s, they did ambient jazz, very, very sci-fi sounding jazz, spacey, beautiful stuff, very ethereal type stuff. And that's an album I'm doing called Searching for the Source. So yeah, I've got some projects going on.
So I definitely think we need to do another episode later this year because
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like we barely skimmed the surface with
Yeah, I could go on. I've got a lot of stuff
Yeah.
going on.
So best place to reach out to Daniel was soundanimator.com.
Yes.
Daniel, it's been a real pleasure, and thanks for being our first guest here in the studio.
My pleasure, Dustin. Yeah, amazing drum room here.
Yeah.
All you drummers out there, tune into the Harry Man Show for sure if you want to see a mind-blowing drum room. I mean, this is just incredible, bro.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
My congratulations to you too.
All right.
As far as, because you and I go back,
Yeah, long time.
and I remember you from back in the day, and you were in a completely different headspace back then.
Yeah, I was.
And where you were compared to where you are now is like night and day, bro. And
Thank you.
I commend it.
Yeah,
I
there's
commend
a
it
life's about
completely.
growth and
Yeah,
trying new things. And
absolutely.
failing and succeeding.
Yeah.
If whatever that happens. But yeah.
Yes. So you can find me on my website, soundanimator.com. Again, you can also, just to plug out real quickly here, you can also find me on Facebook and on YouTube. And I'm going to be starting a Bandcamp here shortly. I have some material that I want to put up there.
Oh, nice.
The 2 Solid Space records that I gave you today, they're going to go up on Bandcamp.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to listen to those.
And they're going to be free. So
Okay.
I don't charge any money for the Solid Space stuff. I feel that I shouldn't because of the way I left that group, so on and so forth. It's a long politically involved
Yeah.
story. But I do believe that the music should be out there
Yeah.
because I worked very, very, very hard. I put years of blood and sweat into that music
Yeah.
to get it to sound like that.
Yeah.
And David Allen is on the
Yeah.
debut record. I mean, come on.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Founding member of the Soft Machine and Gong. And played with Jimi Hendrix. I mean,
Yeah, that's huge. That's godlike.
yeah. I mean, I just saw somebody put up a picture recently on Facebook and I shared it on my page. And it was a what if post. What if history took a different turn and it was the Soft Machine Jimi Hendrix? It was the Jimi Hendrix Soft Machine experience.
Jesus.
And it was a picture of Jimmy sitting down in the front on a velvet chair with his velvet. He's got that famous, I think it's like a crimson velvet coat.
Yeah.
This is a black and white photo, but I immediately noticed I know that coat.
Yeah.
He wore that coat a lot in the late 60s. And it's basically what it is it's David on rhythm guitar. It was supposed to be David on rhythm guitar, Kevin Ayers on bass, Robert Wyatt on drums, and Mike Ratledge on organ and electric piano with Jimmy on lead guitar and vocal.
Huh.
And it did happen for a while. There was about a 6-month period there where they were jamming a lot, and they were possibly discussing the
Jesus.
Jimi Hendrix Soft Machine experience. But then Jimmy died.
Huh.
It didn't work out, and David couldn't get back into England because he got busted, unfortunately, trying to get back into England. His visa expired. So he moved to France and started Gong, and that changed the whole direction of the dynamic of what could have happened.
Yeah.
So that's where you can find me. Look me up. My services are available. I do drum tracks, but I am more interested in collaborating.
Cool.
I don't mind doing studio sessions, and like if you feed me a chart, or if you feed me some music and you want me to lay tracks to it, I'm very open-minded to that. But I'm more interested in innovative, interesting, and original collaborations, and stimulating and intelligent type collaborations. I'm not interested in playing on Nicki Minaj records and recording Powerade
Gotcha.
commercials.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in doing that. I can't emotionally connect with that.
Yeah, you got to be into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bill Bruford taught me that.
Yeah.
I remember reading in a Modern Drummer interview recently, he said, if I cannot emotionally connect myself to the music, I'm not interested.
Yeah, it comes half-assed.
And that's the reason why when he played in Pavlov's Dog, it didn't work out. He only did one gig with them. It was like, okay, I'm not interested in playing the blues. I'm a progressive rock drummer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where you can find me. And it's been a huge pleasure
Yeah.
to hang with you, brother, and be on the show. It's great.